I think it's safe to say that Modern is truly one of the most unique formats in Magic the Gathering, and that's a little weird to say because obviously every format is unique in its own way, but Modern has so many pillars to it. There's so many key strategies, there's such a diversity of decks, there's so many things that you can play. And ultimately, it comes around to the fact that there are a lot of nuanced matchups. There's a lot of decks that play a certain way and actually help their opponent beat them, right? Like there's decks that do a lot of damage to themselves, such as Death Shadow, and there's decks like Burn that love to do damage to the opponent. So in matchups like that, how does Death Shadow actually keep the matchup versus Burn relatively interesting? How does it actually keep it even, and how is this matchup actually winnable for Death Shadow in a lot of cases? And that's the type of thing I want to discuss with a nuanced matchup in the games that you'll be seeing in the Mill versus Dredge matchup. Another nuanced matchup where Mill is obviously going to put cards into Dredge's graveyard, and Dredge wants to put cards into their graveyard to enable things like Creeping Chill and bring back prized amalgams. But why is it that in the games you'll see especially, Mill has almost a 60 to 70% win rate against Dredge? Why is it that a deck that put cards into their graveyard actually loses to a deck that puts into their graveyard for them? Well, let's talk about it. Specifically, the Dredge strategy itself, we have to look at the type of payoffs they have. First and foremost, Creeping Chill represents the early game aggression that Dredge has. You have to operate on the mentality that you are playing at 8 life when you're playing Mill versus Dredge, because in a lot of scenarios you may not have the Creeping Chill like cast off, or you may not have the Ashiok Dreamrender main board, whatever it is, to stop something like this. So when you cast those archive traps, when you put those landfall triggers onto the stack with Hedron Crab, Ruin Crab, and you resolve them, Creeping Chills are evidently going to be exiled and you're going to be losing life. So it gives you a lot less room to fetch aggressively, because sometimes you do need the black source to hard cast a Surgical Extraction because you don't want to lose a 2 life, to cast a Drown in the Lock against their Conflagrate. Whatever it might be, you do need multiple sources of colors, and that forces you into these avenues where it might be tricky because you might not be able to fetch aggressively, and then instead you have to take a board full of damage because they're swinging in with 3/3s. There's a lot of nuance and back and forth, but if you're able to deal with a random copy or two with something like a Tasha's Hideous Laughter, it might be worth throwing it out there, because although the relative CMC of the deck is pretty high for a Tasha's Hideous Laughter, you might only exile 10 cards. If you catch a Creeping Chill in there, you've officially given yourself another fetch shock. You've given yourself 3 life, and you've given yourself more breathing room to deal with a card like this. So again, with something like Tasha's Hideous Laughter, we have these mainboard tools. Second off, Conflagrate represents the long game that this deck has. Thankfully, Dredge has moved away from the Life from the Lone Conflagrate line. If you look at recent Dredge lists, they're not actually trying to play that long game, putting lands in their hand and conflagrating you for like 8 damage. The big thing you have to worry about with Conflagrate is that because we have more crabs and more blockers, Conflagrate generally looks to remove those blockers out of the way and swing in with Silver Smoke Ghouls, swing in with prized amalgams. And obviously there are a lot of other nuances and things we want to look out for in this strategy, but I really want to highlight the early game and then Conflagrate representing the long game. So in many ways, Conflagrate needs cards in their hand, and Creeping Chill just requires you to play the normal game plan as a mill player, so you're enabling it. So how do we deal with that? First, we got Surgical Extraction in the main board being very context dependent. There's not a lot of times where I can tell you this is a definitive surgical priority list against a Modern deck. Modern is a very nuanced format, as is very clear from what I'm talking about. And so context matters in terms of that point in the game state. What do you lose to at that point is different from what you might lose to in 2 to 3 turns. So Surgical Extraction changes. Generally speaking, against Dredge, your first priority is Creeping Chill, because if you can surgical away Creeping Chill, you've given yourself 12 life, 9 life, whichever point you might surgical them, and that gives you more room to take more damage, because you might not want to chump block. You might actually want to keep your crabs to, one-shot mill them. And it gives you more room to fetch shock aggressively, find your colors, whatever it might be. Surgical Extraction is very key, and then you're able to take away key pieces such as Conflagrates, past the Creeping Chills, you take the prized amalgams, whatever it might be, whatever you're worried about in that specific time. Surgical Extraction gives you that. And then finally, Spreading Seas. In the mill primer that I've been working on, watch out in the coming weeks. I'm definitely going to be updating version 2 with the Luros ban. Spreading Seas has been fantastic for me. Now, in a world where Bloodmoon is actually really solid with all the 4-color decks running around, Spreading Seas is fantastic because it forces your opponent into a color that they're not necessarily used to. A lot of decks have red because of Ragavan, Dragon's Rage Channeler, and especially Dredge. Red is actually good for them because it allows them to flashback Ox of Agonis, it allows them to flashback Conflagrate, so red is actually something that they want. So Spreading Seas is fantastic because although it allows them to cast Otherworldly Gaze, they're not dredging with that card. Otherworldly Gaze doesn't actually draw them a card, it's not an... It's a setup card, it's not an engine, it's not an enabler, they're not going off immediately. Spreading Seas allows you to stop that red and turn into blue-red. It stops that green-red and turns it into just, green-blue. Like color combinations that they can't use properly. And remembering that Dredge is really just a 2-land deck, maybe a 3-land deck. Once it gets those 2 lands on, it's not going to be drawing anymore. It's just going to be hard dredging, and especially with Loam gone from a lot of lists, they're not going to be able to recover from that without just straight up drawing cards. And that's what you want. You don't want them dredging. You want them drawing cards because that's less prized amalgams, less Narcomoebas, less creeping chills entering their graveyard, and that's where you want to be. So I cannot speak the praises of Spreading Seas enough in the flex slots of a mill deck. There's a lot of ways to use these flex slots. My personal preference today is Spreading Seas, and you're going to see how Spreading Seas absolutely slaps in the games to follow. So hope you enjoy. Let me know what you think about the 1-game formats and the intros in the beginning and everything. I love doing this stuff. Enjoy Modern Mill versus the die roll. Let's make it happen. Fixing the light back there. Good start. Yeah. This hand does enough. I mean, this is just like one of those picturesque type of hands, right? Like you're on the play, so you can deal with the Ragavan on 2 with the Drown. You got the Crab out. Like, you got the Surgical for something early for playing against Tron. Like, heck, they even mulled once, right? Hey, it's one more card for us to mill, but you can't always think like that. Fractured Sanity is always nice if we don't need it. Like, if we don't need the Drown. We need to push a little bit deeper for our Surgical. Ooh. Spire Bluff Canal. Spire Bluff Canal, nothing, though. I think they're going to Unholy Heat my crap. Like, this is like Murktide, right? Is this Storm? This is Murktide. Come on. This isn't Storm. There's no way. Ain't nobody play Storm. Ain't nobody play Storm. This is Dredge? I'm not going to mill anymore. I'm not going to mill anymore. I don't want to get too crazy. I'm gonna try and, if this is Dredge, I'm gonna try and counter the turn. Yeah, this might be Dredge. It's like the mana base. The mana base is cooling me off. This is Dredge. Okay. Oh, as part of the cost, they don't have to discard, so I don't get like. This is the thing, right? Like, because with the other card, not Thrilling Discover, you get to Surgical before this resolves. What are they going to discard? I feel like I have to let this go through, right? Because then I can Surgical anything that comes off of it. I think I'm supposed to let this go through. Let it happen. It's fine. Like, I have to get them to actually go through their library a little bit. Like, if they find a Creeping Chill, I can just nab that real quick. Okay, so they have an Amalgam. Okay, so that's the big one right there. So I have to definitely get Narcomoeba here. Definitely get the Narcomoeba. So take those out. So in their hand, they have Dark Blast, Dark Blast. Oh, one of the Creeping Chills is in their hand. Okay, so this is the type of math you always want to remember, right? Like, this is a very textbook type of game. We got to play it very methodically. So when you're playing against Dredge, the concept is that, I've gone over this on stream a lot, but for those of you who don't follow me on stream, the concept is that you're always playing at 8 life because you have to worry about the Creeping Chills. We're using up our Surgical Extraction to get rid of, not Creeping Chill, but Narcomoeba. Because there's a Creeping Chill in their hand, we can operate with 3 more life. I'm at 11 life. And information like that is very important. So now they have 3 Creeping Chills in yard. They have an Otherworldly Gaze. Like, they have enablers. I just have to worry about things like, okay, how many Conflagrates do they have? If I can avoid milling of the Conflagrate, like, That's a Silver Smoke Gruul. Ooh, so, okay, so Silver Smoke's gonna be tough. This isn't like the thing type of build where the other card, the one with landfall triggers, I'm forgetting right now. Like they're not playing with that. So I'm not gonna like fetch end step. Like I don't want them to get like. So end step really matters here, right? Because remember that prized amalgam triggers 4 end steps. So if you can avoid milling them over, like I don't want them to get like a combination of creeping chill plus silver smoke. So this is where things gonna get tough. Like I think there has to be a point where I start aggroing them out. And I think this is where I start playing that game. So I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna play this, and I'm just gonna point it at them. And that's fine, right? There comes a point where you just have to aggro them out. So they have a silver smoke in their yard, and I'm not gonna enable anything more, right? And that's the key. I'm not gonna enable anything more. What sucks here is I don't have the ability to Field of Ruin to get a 3rd blue source to just go, like, potentially next turn, top deck land, go land, Fractured Sanity, just, like, go in. So they have the ability to, like, dredge and do a bunch. Just thing is like, they're not doing a lot of damage to us. So that's fine. So they're choosing to hard draw? Interesting. Oh, no. Wait. No. Yeah, they just chose to draw. They didn't dredge. Interesting. Maybe because they're getting too low? They're not hitting creepy chills, though. That's actually hilarious. So we're just going to have to worry about that. And this is the type of thing you got to remember as well, right? The more you mill them, the less creeping chills you hit. That means that your explosive mill, even though you're going to be losing like 9 life, it's very good because those mills are only going to trigger like Silver Smoke Ghoul once. You don't, like, if you're going to mill them that much, you got to mill them as much as you can because you want to trigger these Silver Smokes once so that they get their amalgams once. You got all these things once, right? Because remember that Creeping Chill, when they gain the 3 life, because they gain 3, Silver Smoke enters the battlefield. Then because Silver Smoke enters the battlefield, Prized Amalgam enters the battlefield, right? And like that's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid this like grindy situation. So I think they're gonna trigger Ox of Agonis here. And this is fine. So if they go deep enough, we might actually just be able to trap them here. So that's fine. They're just gonna like return it. That's fine. I can't do anything about that. I mean, I technically can. I could try and draw for surgical, but that's like a very low odds type of thing. They'll get their amalgams. I wonder if they are gonna dredge though. Discard your hand and then draw 3 cards. I wonder if they are gonna dredge or if they're just gonna like. Okay, so they're gonna, yeah. So they are kind of dredging a little bit here. They return the Stinkweed. And they're still resolving the whole damn thing. I wonder how they're going to do this. And again, like, this is very much a match that we can lose, right? It's very difficult. It's very difficult. Okay, so they just chose to, like, just draw. So they don't want to go that deep. So I don't blame them. So let these enter, right? And then what we're going to do... So I gotta read Silver Smoke. Where are the ghouls? At the beginning of your end step. So the end step's already done. So that's fine. They're not going in much farther. I'm actually gonna mill them. So it's getting a little bit close, but I think I just need to find something here. Okay, Field of Ruin's actually kind of big. And Tasha should end this. Okay, so we got pretty lucky. We got pretty lucky. So we were able to just like end this game like straight up. That's fine. End this game straight up. I feel like they drew one like Creeping Chill, which is kind of funny. I feel like they drew a Creeping Chill or something. But we don't want a Tasha's here, sorry. We actually do want to just like hard mill them. Because, like, what if the Tasha's, like, just doesn't go through? I mean, the odds are it doesn't, but, like, that's what you want to do, right? Like, there's no instant speed way they're gonna, like, win here. So. Yeah, you definitely just like mill them on the number. That it's like a good habit to get into, just for everyone listening to this. Like, if you can confirm the win with the actual numbers on milling, like if I can mill 6 and they have 6 cards in their library, it's better to do that than it is with Tasha's, as long as you know that they don't have a shuffle effect. Like you can count on that, because Tasha's always has that rare opportune time where it might miss. Like they might be playing some sneaky card, and like, you know what? Again, like we know that they don't have that, but it's just a good habit to get into. Like I know for sure, I saw their deck list. They're not gonna have 20 CMC and 5 cards. It's just playing that habit, right? Like you're going into the blind, you don't know their deck. Don't cast the Tasha's there. Mill them out for the numbers. So yeah, we're gonna slap this matchup up. Like, again, this is a matchup we're very ready for. So just looking at how we sideboard. We have the 3 Soul Guide Lanterns, already got the Surgical's main. And then we have things like the Extirpates, and we have Crypt Incursions. And then if we need to, we might bring in the Echoing Truth. We're going to take out the crab straight up, right? Like this is tried and true, classic sideboarding. You're taking out all the crabs. I'm actually going to take out a Murderous Cut. And then I'm going to shave on 1 piece of removal. And that's about it. So the reason I'm keeping the Spreading Seas is, in a lot of ways, this deck does rely on red, right? At some point, this deck is going to stop. Like, one thing you have to remember about Dredge is it wants to operate on about 2 to 3 lands, right? Ideally 2, and then any more, it's fine. So if you're able to punish the lands that they have, so they can't use green, they can't use double red, they can't do things like that, you're stopping their late game. They can't cast Ox of Gonus, they can't cast Conflagrate. So Spreading Seas actually has actually a relevant amount of value. And now that we have like hate pieces, we don't actually want hands like this. It's 4 lands and like, oh yeah, we got a Tasha's, but we're on the play. We need better things. We need better things. So we're gonna mull this. So they're gonna begin with 7. We're gonna mull. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. This hand. Wow. If it was not apparent, this hand actually slaps hard. So we drop the Drown that we can't cast, and yeah. Oh, that's fine. Guess what? They got Leyline of Sanctity. I don't care. Fractured Sandy's gonna mill them. All right. So they're gonna start things off playing that way, and I'm not gonna represent the Soul Guide Lantern early unless I have to, because the thing is like, if they have some way to remove it, I'm forced to use it. And I don't want that situation, right? Like I want to say enter the battlefield and I want to target for it clean. That's what I want. So I got the double Surgical. I have that available to me. And I don't need to force this out now for them to like Nature's Claim it. I don't need the 4 life. I need some type of value off of Soul Guide. So that's good. They're hard. They kept a 1-lander, and that is not a good place for them. They kept a 1-lander just because it had Leyline of Sanctity. That is not a good keep at all. Yeah, and I'm gonna punish them for it. I'm gonna play things slow. Spreading Seas. There you go. They don't need blue mana. They haven't cast anything with blue. They don't need blue mana. Like this is it. This is where Spreading Seas actually has some value in a lot of the matchups here. So perfect. And we're gonna punish them even more. We're gonna keep on keeping on. I'm not gonna Field of Ruin that land. I'm gonna try and Field of Ruin the next card, or I'm just gonna play Ashiok Dreamrender and end this game. This game's over. This game's over. I've played Ashiok. This game's over. So what I can do here is okay. Sorry. So I'm forgetting that I can't activate this because of Leyline. But what's great about this is that if they do commit to cards in their graveyard, remember, folks, Ashiok can still mill me. I can still mill myself. That exile effect exiles your opponent's graveyard no matter what. No matter what. I can still exile myself. I can still mill myself. I don't exile my cards. They do. Regardless of the ley line. So, just as a heads up, this game's over. This game's over. They can't come back from this. They can't search their library with their fetches. Not that they do. Yeah, game's over. Clockwork, right? Like, the thing is they kept a very bad hand just because of ley line. So, they're not that great of a player. I apologize. It's just the truth. Like, you're probably new to the deck, or you're probably not understanding how the mill matchup works. But Leyline Sanctity is not a good card against mill anymore. We just have way too many options. And I mean, that's some classic Dredge. Very quick game and a little bit of textbook work.